husband died in a crash, nurturing Brian's artistic gift. Zai. Hudson knelt beside the boy, feeling a surge of empathy he usually kept guarded. Dr. Sarah Truong, the lead forensic specialist, stepped out of the fog, her presence a familiar comfort. As they looked at Brian's drawing, their shoulders brushed a brief, electric moment that lingered in the cold air. The kidnapping was a high-stakes game of extortion. A ransom note demanded $2 million in unmarked bills. Sarah devised a plan to spray the money with a synthetic scent, undetectable to humans, but a beacon for Rex. Jia-san. The trail didn't lead to a stranger, but to the heart of Megan's own firm. Todd, a partner at the firm, had stolen escrow funds and hired Earl Blackburn to kidnap Megan to frame her ex-boyfriend, Jamie. When they found Megan in a derelict machine shop, Hudson realized that, in a city of fog, the greatest dangers often wore the most respectable masks. Jia-san. Chapter 2. The fortune in the mahogany case. The peace after Megan's rescue was shattered by the murder of Jacob Kaufman, a ruthless investor found pinned to the deck of his yacht, the best kind, by a spear gun. Jia-yi. The investigation was a maze of high-tech motives and old-fashioned greed. The missing watch. Kaufman's reproduction diving watch was missing a piece that, hidden inside its case, held a 64-digit cryptocurrency key worth millions. Jia. Seawater clue. Sarah's forensic analysis showed the spear was coated in seawater, suggesting the killer swam to the boat. Jia-yi. The frame-up. The killer, Kaufman's partner, Veronica, had used a PIN code to access a phone and send incriminating texts. Jia. Hudson and Sarah spent long nights on the yacht, the rhythmic rocking of the waves a backdrop to their shared focus. The tension between them was palpable as they sifted through evidence. When they finally cornered Veronica, Hudson found himself marveling at Sarah's brilliance. Chapter 3. Mother's Ruin and the Secret Ingredient. At the Devereaux distillery, the aroma of salt was replaced by the sharp scent of juniper. Willem Devereaux, the patriarch, had been found drowned in a vat of his own gin. Jia-yi. The illness. Willem was dying of congestive heart failure and intended to change his will to favor his daughter, Melanie. Jia-yi. The botanical. The secret ingredient in his new gin was Labrador tea, which could be toxic in high doses. Jia-yi. The betrayal. Melanie, feeling years of resentment and believing her father was going to humiliate her, had found him unconscious and finished the job by dragging him to the vat. As Hudson and Sarah closed the case, they stood in the distillery lab, the warm glow of the equipment reflecting in Sarah's eyes. "At least they have the truth now," Hudson said, his voice low. Chapter 4. The sound of gunfire in the woods. The final trial took them into the rugged wilderness of Cape Royal. Tyler Craner, a drug runner's son, had executed a man in cold blood. The only witness, Wyatt Donner, had fled into the dense forest. Jia-se, Hudson, Rex, and Sarah pursued them, unaware that a professional hitwoman, Serena Rickett, was also stalking the witness. In a clearing, the silence was shattered by gunfire. Hudson was hit, a bullet grazing his arm as he moved to protect Wyatt. Jia-san. Despite the pain, Hudson refused to stop. Through a desperate plan and Rex's unfailing courage, they managed to corner Serena before she could fire the lethal shot. Later, as the sun set over the bluffs, the team gathered at Hudson's trailer for a moment of rare peace. "Jia-yi, you always take the hit for everyone else," Sarah whispered as she tended to his wound. Hudson looked at her, the mask of the stoic detective finally slipping. In the fading light, John's didn't feel like a shroud anymore, it felt like home. Part I. The silent witness and the shadow. The case began with a disappearance that felt like a tear in the fabric of the community. Megan Schaefer, a brilliant lawyer at Wilkins Law, had vanished while walking home, leaving behind only an empty briefcase and a trail of questions. In the quiet neighborhood where she was last seen, a 12-year-old boy named Brian sat on the sidewalk, his hands moving with feverish precision. Jia-san. Brian's world. Brian was diagnosed with autism and communicated primarily through his art rather than speech. When Head, IS, Wen, 70, Jai, a photographic memory. His memory acted like a high-definition camera, capturing the terror of the abduction in stunning, hand-drawn detail. Jai, the drawing. On the concrete, he had etched the face of a man. Not the man the police expected, but the true architect of Megan's nightmare. T.E. Hudson knelt beside the boy, feeling a surge of empathy. He was joined by Dr. Sarah Truong, the lead forensic specialist, whose presence always seemed to steady Hudson's often turbulent thoughts. "He's trying to save her," Sarah whispered, her eyes meeting Hudson's in a brief, electric moment that lingered in the cold air. The investigation quickly took a dark turn. A ransom note arrived, demanding $2 million in unmarked, untraceable bills. The kidnapper warned of dire consequences if the money was tampered with. Sarah devised a plan to spray the money with a synthetic, undetectable scent, invisible to humans, but a beacon for Rex. Jiasu. The trail of betrayal led back to the law firm's partner, Todd. Desperate to cover his own theft of escrow funds, Todd had hired a criminal named Earl Blackburn to kidnap Megan, framing her ex-boyfriend, Jamie, who was found murdered in a van. In a tense confrontation in an abandoned machine shop, Hudson and Rex found Megan alive, just as Todd's deception was finally unmasked. Jiaxi, Part 2, Secrets of the Best Kind. Peace was a fleeting luxury in the harbor. Soon, a new tragedy struck: the murder of Jacob Kaufman, a ruthless Toronto investor, found dead on his luxury yacht. The best kind. The murder weapon, a spear gun, fired with surgical precision. The motive, Kaufman's watch, a reproduction of a vintage diving piece, was missing. Hidden inside the casing was a 64-digit cryptocurrency key worth hundreds of millions. Forensic clue. Sarah noted the spear was coated in seawater, suggesting the killer had approached from the harbor rather than the dock. Hudson navigated a web of suspects, including Kaufman's tech-savvy partner, Veronica, who had orchestrated the murder. Veronica had even used a PIN code on a phone to frame Kaufman's wife and had murdered a co-conspirator to cover her tracks. Amidst the chaos of the arrest, the bond between Hudson and Sarah grew stronger, forged in the quiet hours of the lab and the high-stakes pressure of the hunt. Part 3. The Botanical Betrayal. The scent of the sea was replaced by the sharp, botanical aroma of juniper at the Devereux distillery. Willem Devereux, the family patriarch, had been found drowned in a vat of his own gin during a party intended to celebrate a new recipe. Hudson, and Sarah discovered a family legacy turned toxic: hidden illness. Willem had been dying of congestive heart failure and had intended to change his will. The secret ingredient. The new gin featured Labrador tea, a local botanical that Rex tracked through the distillery. The poisoning. A spirit critic, Simone Sawyer, was poisoned with eye drop medication to point the finger at William's eldest son. The truth was a tragedy of misunderstood intentions. Melanie Devereux, believing her father was going to humiliate her, had found him unconscious and dragged him to the vat to finish the job. As Hudson and Sarah closed the case, they realized that even the most prestigious families could hide the darkest rot. Part T. The Wildest Hunt. The final trial of the week took them out of the city and into the rugged wilderness of Cape Royal. Tyler Craner, the volatile son of a drug runner, had executed a man named Malcolm Carter. The only witness, Wyatt Donner, had fled into the dense forest. Hudson, Rex, and Sarah pursued them into the bluffs, unaware that a professional hitwoman, Serena Rickett, was also stalking the witness. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows. In a clearing, the silence was shattered by gunfire. Hudson was hit, a bullet grazing his arm as he moved to protect Wyatt. Despite the wound, Hudson refused to stop. Through a desperate plan and Rex's unfailing courage, they managed to corner Serena before she could complete her contract. You always take the hit for everyone else, Sarah whispered later, her hands trembling slightly. as she tended to Hudson's wound. Zai